lot of people, including some of our friends, have shied away from renting a camper van so far because they think they're hard to drive and complicated to navigate. So, my driver, are they really hard to drive?
The answer is no. However, there are certain things that you need to consider. In this video, we will talk about 5 things that you need to keep in mind while driving a camper van. Also, at the end of the video, we will share 2 extra tips for road tripping in general. Hey, I'm Jen.
And Yvonne.
Welcome to Road Trip Explorers, where we provide tips, hacks, and guides to help you prepare for your next camper van holiday.
Number 1 to consider before hitting the road is to secure all loose items. It might sound very common-sensey, sometimes it's easier to forget than you think. For example, in our first camper van trip, we had a sink on our trunk and we brought ourselves a little hand soap from home to wash our hands, wash our dishes, whatsoever. And we didn't always remember that that little soap was there, so it tended to fall into the sink in a different corner of the trunk, all over the place, including sometimes we left some cutlery in the sink and it would clunk around. Those are not nice while driving, and they could be quite dangerous if you forget maybe a plate or something on, in the sink or on top of the counter. Another even more important thing, depending on the setup of the bed and the camper van per se, we had this massive piece of wood that would extend into our bed, like as an underlayer of the mattress, which we would take up, move around every once in a while when we wanted to access our luggage. And if we forgot to put that down, that thing would smack right into our seats, which happened once, again, speaking from experience, including the mattress that also runs down against the seats. So be sure to make your bed also, if it's loose, before you drive, so none of those things can happen.
Exactly, which leads to number 2. You have to be cautious while driving and be careful while turning and braking. Okay, braking, it's a little bit tricky. If there's an emergency, obviously brake, right? But try to avoid braking super hard all the time because, as Yvonne explained, you will do your best in securing everything, but not everything will be 100% secure. For example, sometimes if I would make a turn a really sharp turn, then later we would have trouble maybe finding our shoes, right? Because they would be running around. Well, they don't really run around. They would be loose in the camper van, and while turning, they just would move places. The same with clothes, right? So just be a little bit more conscious while driving. It's not a sports car that you're taking with you. It's a little bit more of a car with a house in it.
That being said, obviously shoes, you don't need to repack your bag every time if they're on the floor and they're not any harm. That's not what I meant in securing those items, more of the things that could harm you.
Exactly, yeah. Like that wood.
Like that wood, yes. Number 3 is to prepare your van before you start driving again. That could be opening the curtains after you spent the night and slept, or even opening the curtains, not necessarily the curtains, but maybe your quick drying towel that you've laced over the curtain string to dry. Also not cool to drive with because you impair the view of the driver. That also includes checking the mirrors. The outside mirrors are fine, but the inside mirror, you will use your cabin, where you're usually sitting and driving, at night sometimes to store the clothes you want to wear, and the next morning, your backpacks, whatsoever. And when moving around, you might bump it every once in a while. Happened a couple times. Yeah. So be sure to check those mirrors before you start driving, because that obviously could be dangerous if you don't.
Exactly. So that leads to point number 4. And yeah, it might be tempting. You do have a bed behind your car, like your seating area, but do not use the bed while driving. First of all, it's against the law to do it. And second of all, anything can literally happen while you're on the road. And you don't want someone to be behind sleeping without a seatbelt when an accident, if it happens, it happens. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I mean, we have this one example that we kind of refer to all the time because it's the big incident that happened when the deer hit us and shattered our glass. And if I would have been sleeping in that bed, I would have been just swarmed over in glass. And
exactly.
That is not cool. And I probably would have also hit something because of the braking eventually.
Probably. If you are curious about this story, we created a whole video about it, which you can check out in the description below, or we will link it here in a card as well. And it's called The One When the Deer Hit Us.
The deer hit us.
Yeah. Number 5, which one is it?
What is number 5? Number 5. Yes, very obvious, depending on the type of camper van that you rent. stick to paved roads. It actually says it also in your rental contract that off-roading, that includes driving on beaches, is not allowed and not insured. So don't do it unless you really need to. I mean, sometimes on campgrounds, you're going to leave a paved road to go to your campsite. But that's fine because it's like very hard.
It's like maintained. It's a
maintained
road,
hard,
yeah.
hard ground without pavement, and that's absolutely fine. But don't go off-roading on sand or dirt or anything that's not maintained.
Exactly, and that will be expensive if the car breaks down. Yeah, so those are the 5 things you need to keep in mind if you're renting a camper van. Now let's jump into our 2 extra tips. Tip number 1, investigate on which side of the road people drive, right? For example, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and all of the UK, they drive on the right-hand side, meaning the driver is sitting on the right-hand side and the passenger is on the left-hand side.
And you drive on the left side of the road. Don't make it more confusing than it is.
Yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. The rest of the world, generally, we drive the opposite way. So if you're in Australia or New Zealand and you're watching this, it's the opposite way. And that is not so dramatic, really, if you're used to driving. Just take a few minutes, maybe 3 to 5 minutes after you receive your camper van to drive around the neighborhood, because usually camper van rental companies are in a bit more industrial and they're quiet streets. So take some time to drive around, try to blink, turn to the right, turn to the left, and don't worry, you will eventually end up turning on those, how do you call them?
The wipers.
The wipers instead of the blinkers. It happens all the time. Just know that it will happen, and then, while driving, make sure that you correct yourself and do it in time so you have enough time to signal the people behind that you will be turning.
The driving part here is not difficult at all, and it flows within your body if you're driving. Yeah. However, the thing you need to pay attention to is from which side the traffic comes when you're turning, because that is the tricky part in the beginning, because you tend to, even if you're walking sometimes and you're used to looking to the right if the car is coming and suddenly it comes from the left, could be awkward and dangerous. So just be super alert in the beginning before you get used to the new way of driving.
Exactly, yeah. And then our second tip?
I forgot.
Oh, well, let's look at our cheat sheet.
And the second tip is knowing the dimensions of your camper van. That being said, don't know per inch or centimeter the exact length, but generally in what category it fits. Usually you talk about below 5 feet or less than 5 meters. Anything in those categories help you a lot for campgrounds, because sometimes, not all, they ask for your length to determine which campsite you can use and also the cost that they will charge you. Also know your height. Sometimes some camper vans come with like a lockbox on top of the actual vehicle, or one of those awnings that come out to the side. So know your entire height for driving and for campground purposes in general. One more tip, adding to that one, prior to hitting the road, take a picture of your license plate, because you will be asked for your license plate more than once when registering at campgrounds, and it's kind of not so fun to always run back to where it's parked and then go back to the registration. So just take a picture, favorite it, so you always have easy access to it on your phone, and that hassle is gone.
Yeah, exactly. And believe it or not, I don't think that we've ever talked about heights and widths of cars as much as we do in road trips. It's very important that you know it, because campgrounds will not let you know if there are spots available if they don't know what height and width your car is, right? Length, sorry, yeah.
Please keep in mind, though, that all of the tips we were talking about are in general for small, compact camper vans. Depending on the size that you're going for, that might change dramatically. Yeah. If you're unsure of which size or which type of RV is the right one for you, check out our video on that topic, which is linked in the description below or in this card up here to get more details. Please subscribe if you found these tips helpful and would like to see more of them. And also leave your comments if we missed something, you have more experiences, or you're questioning something and would like to have an answer for it.
Yeah, exactly. We will definitely check those comments and create content to answer those questions for you. Until then, keep on camper vanning. Whoop, whoop.